deep research mode. Sounds kind of futuristic, right? Well, today we're going to dive into what this is, and it's a huge shift in how we find information. I mean, forget just typing keywords into a search bar. We are entering a brand new era, an era of AI-powered discovery that, honestly, is going to change everything. 80%. So what's that number all about? Well, for a lot of professionals, maybe even you, that's how much of your workday is spent, well, not on brilliant analysis, not on game-changing strategy, but on these soul-crushing tasks of just verifying information. That's a massive bottleneck, right? And that is the exact problem we're going to unpack today.
And this really hits home, doesn't it? Drowning in data but starving for verified insights. It's this crazy paradox we're all living in. We have literally all of human knowledge in our pockets, but trying to find the actual signal in all that noise, the stuff you can actually trust, man, that is a huge challenge.
Okay, so our first section, drowning in data. Let's talk about the hidden cost of all this information overload, because it's a big one. You know, this isn't just about losing a few hours of productivity, it's the emotional cost. It's that feeling of just decision fatigue after you've been researching for hours, or that little voice in the back of your head, that anxiety, wondering, did I miss something? Is there a better source out there? And now, on top of all that, we have to worry about AI just making stuff up, those hallucinations. The end result, we're left with this totally fragmented understanding, pieced together from like 100 open browser tabs. We've all been there. All right, so that's the problem. But how did we get here? That brings us to our next section, the search evolution. We're going to take a quick journey from basic keywords all the way to intelligent agents. So this timeline really maps it all out. It didn't happen overnight. It kind of started back in 2012 when Google rolled out its knowledge graph. That was huge. It taught search engines to understand things, not just strings of words. Then, boom, 2017, the transformer architecture comes along and completely revolutionizes how AI understands language and context. Fast forward to 2023, and this thing called RAG, that's Retrieval Augmented Generation, becomes a big deal. It let us ground AIs in specific documents so they wouldn't just make things up. And that brings us to today, 2024, with the rise of AI agents that can actually do stuff, perform multi-step tasks. See the pattern? All of these have been stepping stones, building towards this next logical step, deep research mode. Which leads us right into section 3, enter deep research mode. This is it. This is the breakthrough we've been building towards. Okay, so what exactly is deep research mode? The best way to think about it is like having your own personal team of super smart, tireless AI researchers. They don't just skim the surface and give you a few links. No, they dig deep, and then they dig deeper, going layer by layer. They're constantly cross-referencing facts between different sources to make sure they're accurate. And then, and this is the real magic, they pull it all together, synthesizing everything into one single, coherent, and totally reliable report. And this chart really shows you what a massive leap we're talking about. On the left, you've got traditional RAG. That's how a lot of AI tools work right now. You give them a set of documents, and they answer questions based on only that. It's a one-and-done retrieval step. But look at the right side. That's deep research mode. It's not passive. It actively goes out and browses the open web to find new information. It performs these complex, multi-step reasoning tasks, and it synthesizes brand new insights. The bottom line is this: it goes out and finds the knowledge for you, instead of just working with what you've already given it. Game changer. So how does this actually work under the hood? Let's go inside the reasoning loop and break down how these agents actually think and work. It's basically a 4-step process. Step 1 is query decomposition. The AI takes your big, complex question and breaks it down into smaller, bite-sized research tasks. Simple enough. Step 2 is autonomous browsing. The agent then goes out and actively searches the web for info on each of those little tasks. Now, step 3 is where things get really cool. This is the fact verification part. The agent is constantly cross-referencing what it finds, checking data points between sources to make sure it's accurate and to avoid those hallucinations. And finally, step 4, synthesis and reporting. It takes all that verified info and weaves it together into one single, easy-to-read report, complete with citation. And there are 3 core ideas that make all of this possible. First, you have the autonomous agents themselves. They're like the little workers doing the digging. As they're working, they use something called knowledge graph synthesis, which is a fancy way of saying they build a map of how all the different facts connect to each other. And once they have that map, they can do what's called multi-hop reasoning. That lets them make these smart, logical leaps from one verified fact to another, building up to a really complex and trustworthy conclusion. Okay, that's the tech, but what about the bottom line? Let's talk about the ROI of insight and actually quantify the impact this has on professional work. So remember that number we started with, 80%? Well, here it is. This is the before picture. This is our reality right now. A staggering 80% of our time spent on the grunt work of just verifying data. That leaves a tiny, tiny 20% slice of the pie for the stuff that actually matters, the analysis, the strategy. It's a completely backwards and inefficient way to work. But now look at this, the after picture. Deep research mode completely flips that ratio on its head. It automates away that 80% of verification work, and suddenly we get to spend our 80% on what we humans are actually good at: thinking, analyzing, being creative, coming up with strategies. This isn't just a small improvement, you guys. This is a complete transformation of how we work. And the applications for this are just massive. I mean, think about it. Financial due diligence, competitive intelligence, deep market analysis. Really, any field where being right is absolutely critical. This kind of tech can accelerate your decision-making like crazy. And you get to do it with this incredible foundation of verified confidence. So, this all leads us to our final section, Welcome to the Agentic Age. It's not just me saying this is a big deal. Let's hear what some of the top experts in the field have to say about this future. Here's a quote from Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI. He says, agents are going to be the next giant breakthrough. I mean, when the guy running OpenAI says something is the next giant breakthrough, you probably ought to pay attention. He's not seeing these as just another feature, but as a foundational pillar for the entire future of AI. And it's not just him. Demis Hassabis, the CEO of Google DeepMind, is saying the exact same thing. He puts it perfectly. We are moving from chatbots to agents that can get things done. I love that distinction. We're moving away from things you just talk to and toward things that can actually do things for you. They're becoming our active partners. And all of this leaves us with one last really big question to chew on. If all that tedious, time-consuming research work is finally automated, what are we freed up to do? When the machines can handle the what new heights can our own creativity and analysis reach? What's going to be our next great cognitive leap?